Hello there. Welcome to this crucial training session for aspiring befrienders. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that touches all of us at some point in our lives, and that's grief, loss, and bereavement. As a befriender, you play a vital role in supporting individuals through some of their darkest moments, and understanding these concepts is key to providing compassionate, effective support. So let's explore how can we be there for those who are experiencing loss and grief. Before we jump into the practical aspects, let's clarify some terms you encounter in the work. When we talk about grief, grief is the emotional response to loss, particularly when someone we care about dies. It's not just sadness, but a whole spectrum of emotions, including anger, guilt, and even despair. Importantly, grief is a process and not a state, because it involves working through various stages or cycles of emotions. When we talk about loss, we're referring to the absence of something or someone significant, and that could be a physical loss, like a death, or it could be a social loss, like the end of a relationship or job. The experience of loss triggers grief, and it is often the case that the more significant the loss is, the more intense the experience of grief would be. So when we talk about bereavement, we're talking about the period after a loss when we experience grief and go through the mourning process. The duration and intensity can vary depending on factors like the nature of the relationship and the circumstances of the loss. Remember that these experiences are universal. We all go through them, which allows us to empathize with our callers, even if their specific circumstances differ from our own. As a befriender, understanding grief, loss, and bereavement is important not just for helping our callers, but also for ourselves to make sense of our own experience. By learning about these concepts, we're better equipped to create a space where callers can express their feelings and experiences without judgment. We have intentionally avoided explaining theories and frameworks surrounding grief in detail. This is because when you're befriending a caller, it is more important to practice deep listening than knowing which stage of grief they are at. Having said that, we highly encourage you to learn these frameworks in your own time, as they could not only help you in your befriending practice, but also your own experiences in life. And here are just one of the many frameworks shown in this slide. Now let's talk about what we should and shouldn't do when a caller wants to discuss their grief. Here's what to avoid. Number one, don't prescribe how they should feel or grieve, because everyone's journey is unique and personal. Avoid cliches like time heals all wounds or everything happens for a reason. These can feel dismissive of the caller's pain. Don't compare grief experiences. Saying, "I know how you feel," or comparing their loss to your own experience can be quite unhelpful. Avoid assigning positive meaning to their loss. Suggesting that there's a silver lining can be hurtful and may undermine their current emotions. Also avoid offering shallow positivity. Statements like "look on the bright side" can invalidate their feelings. Avoid using minimizing language, such as "at least you're free to do what you want to do." By doing that, you're actually invalidating their loss and feelings. And lastly, don't rush to fill silences. Sometimes quiet presence is what's needed the most. So here are some things that you could do. Firstly, listen actively. This means giving your full attention and using minimal encouragers like yes. Offering a simple "I'm sorry to hear that" when they first mention their loss can be quite helpful. Be patient. Grief can be overwhelming and it may take time for them to articulate their feelings. Therefore, allow the caller to express themselves at their own pace. You may also consider speaking at the same pace with your caller. If a caller starts crying, don't try to stop them. Instead, give them space to express their grief and assure them with phrases like, "It's okay to cry, I'm here for you." If they start to express hopelessness, don't hesitate to ask directly the suicide question. With regards to this, please refer to your suicide awareness training resources for guidance. Reflecting emotions and validating their experiences regularly through the call. Here are some examples. You must be feeling a lot of despair at this period of time. I can't imagine how painful this is for you. It's natural to feel angry after what you've been through. And lastly, regularly check in on their current emotional state. For example, how are you feeling right now? By inviting the caller to be aware of their present emotional experience, it can help reduce any feelings of distress. Now you've understood the source underlying their emotional experience of grief, loss, and bereavement, you now can delve deeper into their loss. At this point, it is likely that you have built rapport, but always respect their boundaries. Here are some ways you can explore the caller's experience of grief and loss. If it's about the loss of a loved one or relationship, you can ask the following questions. How was your relationship with this person? What is it that is making you feel guilt, regret, despair, or any other emotion? How would you like to remember them? And if it's about the loss of an opportunity, you can ask, what dreams or goals did you have with this opportunity? What have you learned from going through this? If you experience something like this again, what could you do next time? If it's about the loss of health, perhaps due to illness, you could ask, what aspects of your life have changed the most? What support do you feel would be most helpful right now? How has your condition affected your sense of self? If it's about the loss of identity, you could ask, what parts of your identity do you feel have been lost or changed? What new roles are emerging as a result of this loss and change? And how do you see yourself differently now compared to before? If it's about the loss of stability or security, or perhaps any other need, you could ask, what parts of your identity do you feel have been lost or changed? What would help to restore a sense of safety? How are you coping with the changes in your life? And these questions are also relevant with other needs, and you can refer to the list of universal needs to adapt these questions to your situation. If it's about the loss of certain traditions or culture, you could ask, what traditions or cultural practices do you miss the most? How has this loss affected your connection to your upbringing? Are there any new traditions you could consider embracing? If it's about the loss of environment, you could ask, how have these changes affected your daily routines or sense of belonging? How are you adjusting to the new environment you're in? What aspects of your environment are you still missing? And sometimes grief can involve various people. So here are some questions that you could ask. How has this event affected your family members? What changes have you noticed in the people around you? And how is that affecting you? How are you and the people around you supporting each other through this period? As the conversation progresses, and if the caller seems less distressed, you could perhaps explore coping strategies. Here are some ways you could do that. You could ask about past and present coping methods. Questions like, what has helped you through difficult times before? And how are you coping with the loss? If they have some trouble finding out, you may want to explore what activities did they enjoy doing or find meaningful in the past, and perhaps reflect and summarize to them, and invite them to consider exploring whether they could be other possible sources of meaning during this period of bereavement. You could also explore activities that they find meaningful or enjoyable. A simple question to explore that would be something like, what brings you joy? You could also discuss their cultural or spiritual beliefs about loss and grief if appropriate. Remember, when we do this, we don't share and impose our cultural and spiritual beliefs on them. Rather, we ask about the caller's background and beliefs around loss and grief and how these inform their experiences. Remember to emphasize that there's no right way to grieve, and the process is not a linear one. Experiencing emotional ups and downs are a natural part of the grieving process. As you're nearing the end of the call, here are some things that you could do. Firstly, you could check in on their current emotional state. You could do this by simply asking, how are you feeling right now? You could summarize what you learned and heard about their situation, and perhaps offering some words of care, as shown in this slide. And before you hang up, Do remind them that they can call again if they feel overwhelmed or suicidal by sharing the care line's phone number and operating hours. Remember, by focusing on these aspects, active listening, validation, exploring their experience, and discussing coping strategies, you're already creating a supportive environment for callers to navigate their grief journey. Your role, again, isn't to fix their grief, but to walk alongside them, offering a compassionate ear and a safe space to express their feelings. By doing this, you're already doing important work, and with these tools, you'll be even better equipped to support those in need. Thank you so much for your dedication to this crucial role. Keep up the great work and remember to take care of yourselves too. Until next time.